clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Is anybody, besides yours truly, trustworthy anymore? Jim Jamatis at Red State offers up this lament. It was on Tuesday. The GOP holds the reins to both houses of Congress and the presidency. So why do I feel less hopeful about conservatism than I did even when Barack Obama was in the White House? Because the president is Donald Trump, that's why. I think largely it is because the number of people I trust to tell me the truth has dwindled to a precious few. Remember, this is before Trump's rambling, bizarre brain fart of a presser yesterday. The media has always been biased, but at one time you could at least tease out the facts from the spin. Lately, you can't even do that. In the wake of Trump's election, the facts have become irrelevant on both sides. The media simply cannot be trusted to get anything right anymore. That in itself is bad enough, but you can't trust the White House to give you the truth either. On one side, you have a left-wing extremist media pursuing an agenda to take down the Trump presidency. And on the other, you have right-wing media that is almost entirely sold out to Trump and salivating over the chance to land some body blows on the aforementioned left-wing media. Both sides are entrenched and colluding with their elected counterparts. Remember, in independent media? The left versus right debate is like two competing late-night infomercials selling similarly crappy products. Part of it, I think, is that people are playing by old rules in an entirely different game. Rush Limbaugh and other talk radio hosts, doggy treat salesman, still view the political world as crazy liberals trying to take down sensible, liberty-loving conservatism. Well, the Trump regime is shoehorned into the role of sensible conservatism because something has to be, if you're going to maintain that no longer applicable paradigm. That's the narrative that sells iced tea and buy gold advertisements. It doesn't matter whether Trump is actually doing anything to advance conservatism as long as he's the target of the far left. Anything the far left attacks is assumed to be good. Acknowledging that both sides may be equally incompetent or out of control is not part of the proven business model, so they take what's out there and force it to fit what's proven to be profitable. Eric Erickson wrote on Tuesday at the Resurgent about how the lunatic fringe on the media right has been granted legitimacy by this White House. So let's turn to that piece, shall we? Trump invites a cesspool of fake news to cover the White House, and I'm not talking about MSNBC. Now, to be fair, the press has largely brought this on themselves. I've already lost count of the stories reported by the media and retracted or modified substantially in the same day. Even today, the New York Times is running a correction on a story about Michael Flynn that notes the original story quoted from tweets that might not have come from Flynn. But I think the White House does the American people a great disservice by inviting Gateway Pundit, he makes no bones about it, he's a neo-Nazi, he's a National Socialist, to the press briefings. I'm not sure there is a greater purveyor of fake news on the left or right than Gateway Pundit. Inviting a known purveyor of fake news gives that purveyor a credibility that is not deserved. I mean, you want to know how bad Jim Hoft, the Gateway Pundit, is in this regard? He makes Alex Jones go, whoa, dude, I'm not touching that. Inviting a known purveyor of fake news gives that purveyor a credibility that is not deserved. It gives a credibility that will most assuredly be abused to spread even more fake news. From malarkey about terrorism to showing NBA fans as Trump supporters to you name it, Gateway Pundit runs nonsense, and I still have not determined if it is intentional or just because of some level of insanity. No, it's cultism and tribalism. Pretty much. Gateway Pundit wrote that John Podesta was encouraging illegal alien voting based on an email that actually did not mention illegal aliens. He posted a picture of the Cleveland Cavaliers victory parade and claimed it was a Trump rally. Then there was the Confederate flag campaign button for Obama that actually was not from the campaign. You know, there was a time that he claimed an Asian Washington Post reporter had been taking pictures of Rex Tillerson's notes. Not only did he not apologize after trolls started sending the reporter death threats, but then he blamed the media for not properly outing who it was. My personal favorite was Gateway Pundit confusing closed captioning of applause with it being a command from Obama to applaud at his speech. Gateway Pundit has not only misled a ton of people through fake news, but relying on him has gotten others into trouble too. In October, Gateway Pundit ran this story about a postal worker bragging about ripping up absentee ballots. Multiple conservative outlets ran with it, but it wasn't true. The Twitter account was from a comedian trying to bait people. It worked, and Gateway Pundit running the story roped in other conservatives whom the left was able to attack as purveyors of fake news. The list goes on and on. Now, I try to ignore this, but I think people on the right need to stand up for integrity on our own side. Whether there's a traffic obsession or that side is willing to publish nonsense knowingly, or a mental issue and that side is publishing nonsense they really believe or something else, it is still a problem. There's been a lot of reporting out there in the past few months about websites knowing they can throw out the most absurd stories and generate loads of cash for themselves off the suckers who believe because they want to. You know that poster in Fox Mulder's office on the X-Files? Showing a flying saucer and the caption, "I want to believe." Tribalism, folks. Tribalism. It has, unfortunately, become a profitable business. Whether it is that or something else, folks on the right are ruining their own credibility by defending this sort of stuff, and it opens all of us up to attacks from the left that we promote fake news. You know, this is another example of the right throwing aside their principles and saying, you know what, we're going to fight fire with fire. But the problem is the right can't get away with the left's tactics. Trump is never going to be Obama in the sense that he's never going to be allowed to get away with what Obama got away with because he's not of their tribe by his own choice. He ran as a Republican, so he's not going to get away with any of the things that Obama did. You can't fight fire with fire. The right doesn't get to do that. But I guess Trump supporters got to find out the hard way, like always. I often get accused of having an axe to grind against certain media outlets and figures, and in a way I do. For me, being against Trump was partly about being against bloggers and pundits who were unapologetically pro-Trump. Even before Trump barged into politics, I was seeing the troublesome trend of bloggers selling out entirely for candidates at various levels of politics. Following the media's crappy example. At that point, you lose legitimacy as a blogger or pundit because you can no longer respond objectively to any action taken by that candidate or anything said about him or her. You have become another campaign surrogate. What you publish is no longer news or opinion, but propaganda. At one time, the alternative media on the right was about speaking the truth to power. Now it's just as often about speaking for the powerful. With the aforementioned as prelude, now we arrive at Trump's rambling brain fart of a press conference on Thursday. And Jim Jamatis, no, that's not a pseudonym of mine, I really wish it was, but wouldn't be too far off, actually. But he makes a very salient point at Red State. Sure, it's entertaining, but what do Trump's diatribes against the media actually accomplish? And I know it's cathartic. Yeah, he's sucking it to the media. Yeah, well, it's a catharsis in the moment, but then after it's done, it's like a drug. You got to keep taking more of it in order to keep yourself up. But what does it accomplish? Is it going to change anything? Is it going to improve anything? No. Upon further reflection, it's just going to make things worse. Now, we've had now more than 24 hours, 48 actually, filled with analysis of Thursday's stream of Trump consciousness press conference. Now, most of it boils down to people who love Trump love watching Trump attack news reporters. We've already known that for quite a while, though. And I get it. I get it. Nothing appeals to a blogger like slam-dunking a reporter peddling a bogus story that advances the left's agenda. The satisfaction comes from exposing them by telling the real story, the truth. That used to be the point of combating media bias. Biased media is infuriating. It's Orwellian. It's been that way since before I was born. Ladies and gentlemen, this goes back 50, 60 years. Nothing new. I understand why people hate the enemidia, as I refer to them, and get a jolt of schadenfreude when Trump calls them liars. But beyond that, I don't understand why it is treated by so many like it's some sort of victory. I think anyone who believes that Trump will somehow make the media more truthful and impartial is delusional. Other than entertaining people who are already 100% behind him, he accomplishes nothing by rambling on about how terrible and dishonest the media is. Especially considering that when he does it, his spiel is usually peppered with misstatements or falsehoods, which they can then spend hours on TV pointing out to their audience and telling them how unhinged the president is. It's mutual assured destruction, or mutual assured discrediting. As much of his supporters are reveling in Trump's aggressive disdain for the press, he won't win that fight. They've got 24 hours a day in which to tear him down. Trump has the occasional press conference to address his dissatisfaction, and if every one of those becomes a full-blown pissing match complaint session about how they cover him, he's going to be forever portrayed as a buffoon. He's going to be anyway. Witness Alec Baldwin making a new career out of portraying Trump in Saturday Night Live skits. But this gets back to what I say about Trump being his own worst enemy. Trump committing unforced errors. Trump blowing his own feet off. Don't hand the media the ammunition, the public relations ammunition, to make you look even worse than you already do. How is their coverage ever going to be seen as unfair if he's constantly contributing to it? Remember, media being hostile to Republican presidents isn't new. George W. Bush dealt with it for 8 years. George H.W. Bush dealt with it for 4 years. Ronald Reagan for 8 years. Gerald Ford for 2.5%, Richard Nixon for 6 or 5.5%. This is not new. It's old hat. But the difference was the most successful Republican presidents, Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush, didn't let themselves get drawn into pissing matches with the media, petty back and forth backbiting, much less wade into it and initiate those hostilities themselves. They really did hold themselves above that. They held themselves above the media. They spoke directly to the people. You know, Trump supporters think Trump does that using Twitter. Now, Trump could use social media to do that, but that's not what he uses social media for. He uses social media to be every bit the buffoonish dick that he is at his press conferences, like the one on Thursday. Now, his diehard supporters, like the ones who will show up or showed up at his rally in Florida yesterday, will go on enjoying the show. They'll love it. I mean, they'll love anything he does. He's already got them. You know, in politics, there's the term red meat. What red meat is when you're going to a rally of your supporters and you tell them what they want to hear and they go, yeah! But the problem with that is that you already got them. If you're, in this case, Donald Trump, you already have their support. You can take that support for granted. They will never, Trumplicans will never leave Donald Trump. What he's got to do he's got to add to that base. He's got to build a coalition to reach a majority, which he did not have in the 2016 election. He only got 46% of the popular vote last November 8th, so he needs to increase. He needs to build a majority coalition looking ahead in interests of, and he's already running for re-election. He's already made that clear. And he needs a majority coalition if he's going to get reelected. He can't necessarily count on the Democrats remaining batshit insane. You know, vagina hats and all just the crazy, nutso, wacko lunacy into which they've descended. So he has to build a majority coalition. And this is not the way to do it. In fact, it makes Trump look weak. You know why? Because it makes it look like he's being told, hey, things are not going well. You might run the risk of losing some of that base support. You know, some of the reluctant Trump supporters. Not the hardcore Trumplicans, but the recucklicans, the ones who didn't necessarily like Trump, but they felt they had to hold their nose and vote for him in order to stop Hillary Clinton from getting elected. You know, it's like he's being told, you might lose some of those reluctant supporters, the ones that were anti-Hillary rather than pro-Trump, and so he's having to go out of his way to shovel ever greater quantities of red meat to his base. That suggests that he's in danger of losing support, not gaining it. Just something to think about, Trump supporters. I know you think everything's going to be fine. I have one Trump supporter who insists. I mean, he clings to the Rasmussen survey, which is an outlier. It shows Trump at 55% approval. No other poll shows him above 50%. Some show him under 40%. The Real Clear Politics average is 45%, mid-40s. He insists that a year from now, Trump will be at 65%. Mark my words. And you know what I told him? Yeah, I will mark your words. And a year from now, I will remember that you said this. And when Trump is still at 45% or even lower, or anything short of 65%, I will remind you of what you said. And he'll be off on the next made-up, it's like Charlie Brown in Peanuts, you know, whenever after each time that his team has lost 123-0, and he says, "Just wait till next year." That's what it's going to be for the next 4 years, folks, the Trump supporters. But next year is going to come, and then the year after that, and then the year after that, and you're going to get to 2020, and if he doesn't build a majority coalition, now I know, 4 weeks. It's only been 4 weeks. A lot of time to go. 6 months is an eternity in politics. We all know that. So it's out there in front of him, but he's not giving any indication that his slow start is a bug. It's looking all the more so like a feature, and it's a function of his personality and his low gutter trash character. See, the thing is that die-hard Trump supporters will go on enjoying these rambling brain fart press conferences, going, yeah, but the people who voted for him only because he wasn't Hillary won't defend him forever. It's just a question of how long can he keep the Republicans, not his cultists, not hardcore Trumplicans. They're there. They'll do whatever he says. They'll follow him wherever he goes. They'll never turn on him. But the Republicans, the people who were more anti-Hillary than pro-Trump, eventually, they're going to want to see results. And if he's not delivering them and just bringing disrepute upon the Republican Party and disrepute upon the conservative movement, and it's very telling that he continues to shovel red meat to his hardcore base. I think he does it because he's a narcissist and he loves the attention. And he's finding the presidency hard. Oh, it's much harder than he thought. He's going to fix everything. Only he can fix. He's the right socialist, in other words. Only he can fix what's wrong with America. And now it's proving to be more difficult than he thought. Well, thought. Yeah, he doesn't really think, but he emotes, he exudes ego trips, that sort of thing. I mean, now, just to get back to the example here, politicians like Newt Gingrich or Ted Cruz, or even Lindsey Graham, whoever, have been combative with the news media as well. But the difference is that they could enunciate why reporters' questions are flawed or based on false premises. You see, when they lecture the media, they are teaching. Maybe the reporters aren't learning anything, but somebody watching probably is. In other words, they can tell you why and how and in detail how and why the media is biased. They can tell you what the bias is. They can fill in the blanks. Tell the rest of the story, in the words of the late, great Paul Harvey. Good day. I mean, Gingrich dressed down reporters as a candidate like a tough professor grading a student. Trump is more like a man beating a dog with a rolled-up newspaper for barking too much 2 days ago. All the dog learns is that this is a human that hits me, so I'm going to bark louder at him the next time I see him. Trump doesn't say, this is what the press got wrong on this issue. This is what they got wrong on that story. He doesn't teach. He just yells and screams and rants and raves and insults and kicks dirt like an umpire, or like a baseball manager on home plate disputing an umpire's call. There's nothing educational about it. He's just being a dick to a bunch of dicks. It's mutual dickery. Dickery, dickery, dock. You see, the reporter lectured by Gingrich might not have been convinced of anything, but he would at least learn to approach Gingrich differently and tighten up his questioning. Make his job easier, right? Trump's approach only asks for more of the same. It incentivizes the media to be just as big a dicks as Trump is. And does. The press gets indignant, but they certainly don't feel as if they've been justifiably chastised. Or rather, they haven't had it exposed to the public why they deserved the chastisement. It's not enough to say, well, the media is fake news, biased. Yeah, they are. Explain how. Demonstrate it. Don't become like the media. Don't become like the media. Explain why they're wrong and create that contrast. Trump doesn't do that. Trump gets right down on the mud and acts just like they do. The only way Trump comes out ahead is if he convinces people not to pay attention to the press altogether. How likely is that? Not very if he can't deliver substance to back up the emotion. So, does the media draw Trump into dickery, or does Trump draw the media into dickery, or are they just all dicks? I tend to think the latter, personally, the third option. But Jay Caruso has some advice for the news media at Red State. Worry more about what Trump is doing instead of what he says about you. Now, we just discussed about the news media, discussed the news media, offering them a reminder as to why the public trusts them the same, or maybe less, than the politicians they cover. On cue, members of the media spent nearly the entire day complaining about Trump and what he said about the press. They crapped the bed when he tweeted the following, quote, "The fake news media is not my enemy, it is the enemy of the American people." I guess that's Trump's attempt at being noble. And no, it's not believable. Bless their little insensitive hearts, the media that is. They could barely take it. But just to give one example of how the press handled it, here is what Ryan Leza had to say. Quote, "I was on the fence about this, but how can journalists go to White House Correspondents Association dinners and toast somebody who has branded them an enemy of the state? Actually, if you really believe that, why would you even go to a White House Correspondents Association dinner, since it's quite possibly a trap to get them all taken into police custody?" Hey, if you're following the logic of it. I mean, does Trump really believe that? Well, wait till the next segment. We'll discuss those possibilities. Now, putting aside Lisa's silly comments about the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which is nothing but an event where journalists get to pretend they're celebrities, he completely misstates what Trump said. Trump specifically said the fake news media are the enemy of the American people. Consider the source. Lisa is the one who tweeted a quote from Jeb Bush about mass shootings that purposely left out critical context. People in the media are proving to be just as thin-skinned and just as narcissistic as Donald Trump and Barack Obama. Just as Donald Trump needs to get over it when he decides to start a flame war against a critic, the press needs to get over it when Trump complains about them. Somebody said to me, Trump was unhinged, but who cares if he was whining about the media? The point is, he was whining instead of being president. Presidential, you say. Perfectly stated, I might add. It's fair to make the case Donald Trump is attempting to delegitimize the press, but in the course of his near 1 month in office, he's delegitimized the judiciary, Congress, NATO, the intelligence community, and far, far more. I mean, he tries to delegitimize everybody who isn't him and who doesn't bow down and kiss his ass. Every day the press is busy fighting on Trump's turf by battling him about themselves. Is another day issues such as the repeal of Obamacare, tax cuts, and the nomination of Neil Gorsuch remain untouched, although I have to point out that there's not a whole lot happening on any of those fronts at the moment. If and when anything does happen on any of those fronts, I'm sure the media will be right there sounding the alarm of the apocalypse and whatever. Now, there are still important questions about Russia that need to be answered and investigated. That Trump needed to declare his administration as a finely tuned machine. Yeah, go ahead, play it.
Bullshit! 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 You're not still the reason to play. Bullshit! Let's go bullshit!
When it is, in fact, a train wreck, needs a follow-up, you might say. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not one of these people who thinks Trump is this brilliant, idiot savant Svengali able to manipulate the press at will. What's going on is the equivalent of a gorilla and a group of chimpanzees flinging shit at each other. However, the media is busy engaging in a battle they likely, well, they're winning it. They're winning it, trust me. If they continue to make it about themselves. Trump has a core of supporters who will follow his lead no matter where it goes. If he determines tomorrow the Wall Street Journal is fake news, they're going to agree and start saying it. If Trump is left alone to grouse about the media, he loses out. 2 days ago, Donald Trump signed an executive order rolling back a last-minute Obama coal mining regulation. He did with coal miners by his side along with Democrat Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia. Optically, this was a terrific win for Trump. Problem is, hardly anybody noticed it because he was too busy screaming at the press and the press screamed back. It all comes down to this for the media, the media. In the words of New England Patriot head coach, Bill Belichick, do your job. Stop making threats to boycott White House correspondents' dinners that we all know you're not going to boycott. Stop blubbering about our supposedly threatened democracy because the president is having a pissy fit on Twitter. The Fourth Estate has more important things to do than see who between them and Donald Trump can piss more on each other's leg. In short, get to work. My gal Susan Wright at Red State closes this video with a kind of a cautionary tale. I mean, there's no question that Donald Trump has authoritarian instincts. That's simply his personality. The question when it comes to such things is, would his subordinates, would the personnel in his administration actually carry out blatantly unconstitutional authoritarian initiatives, especially if they are illegal? That's really the question. Now, Carl Bernstein of Woodward and Bernstein fame, one half of the journalistic duo that broke the Watergate scandal, has a very definite opinion of the behaviors of the new president. Quote, or this is from a tweet, of course, everything's on Twitter now. The most dangerous enemy of the people is presidential lying, always, when it's a Republican. When it's a Democrat, I can lie up a storm. Everything they say is true. But, sorry, I had to state the obvious just for context. Attacks on the press by Donald Trump more treacherous than Nixon's. Well, he kind of farmed that out to Spiro Agnew, if I remember correctly. Remember the silent majority speech, that kind of thing. Here's another Bernstein tweet. Real news, not fake, is that Donald Trump is trying to make conduct of press the issue instead of egregious and unhinged conduct of POTUS. Well, it's true. It's not fake. I mean, that is true what he said. Trump and his camp have set about to topple the First Amendment piecemeal by casting doubt on any media source that does not give deference to Trump's word alone. As I've often said, it is a self-inflicted wound, considering that most of the big networks have shown a blatant left-wing bias for years. It's as if no matter where they come from, no matter what their upbringing, once inside the Beltway, journalists forget everything they were brought up on and become the gatekeepers of liberal policy. Now, that being said, we still need a free press, even if news is being delivered with an obvious bias. And here's an important point to bear in mind. It's still news, and the people, if they know what their beliefs are and they are informed on the issues, won't be swayed by someone else's bias. Which is the whole point. That's why you look, study, learn, so that you won't be fooled. So that you won't be led around by the nose by what Michael Reagan used to call the 21-inch peephole into paradise. Media bias has been the case for decades, ladies and gentlemen. Since before I was born. This goes back all the way to the Great Depression, if you want to come right down to it. So media bias is nothing new. Dishonest media bias. That's one thing. I mean, there's always been media bias going all the way back to the start of the country. It's just back in the 19th century, there wasn't any attempt to pretend that wasn't what it was. Everybody knew which was the Republican newspaper in town and which was the Democrat newspaper in town. Everybody knew that. It was all out in front. All up front. Nobody tried to hide it. I mean, that's the only thing that's really new about the last 10 years or so, is that the media, they used to insist that, well, we're not biased, we're objective. This is just the way things are. Just eerily, not so coincidentally, happened to line up right with the liberal agenda. Once the Obama era began, the media dropped all pretense. They were partisan, and they were going to push the left-wing agenda openly, and they were an arm of the Democrat Party. They didn't make any bones about it. And so that is the context of all this. As Susan Rice said, definitely a self-inflicted wound. But we do still need the media. Even if the news is being delivered with an obvious bias, it's still news and the people. If they know what their beliefs are and they are informed on the issues, and you should have been decades ago, you have no excuse. You have no excuse to get fooled by media bias, and you have no excuse to get all bent out of shape about it all the time like it's some new discovery. It's part of the background. It's like the sky being blue instead of green. It's just what it is, and you've got to deal with it accordingly. But it can be overcome. Hell, Donald Trump is president. I mean, how do you overcome it more effectively than that? The fact that Hillary Clinton is not president today proves conclusively the media aren't invincible and they don't always win. And yet Donald Trump is still going on and on like he lost. The irony being that he is hurting himself by doing so. Censorship, or allowing for our government to shut down news that they don't like. Remember when Barack Obama tried to ban Fox News from the White House press pool? Remember that? Remember they talked about bringing back the fairness doctrine? I wonder, now that I think about it, parenthetically, if Donald Trump sought to invoke the fairness doctrine and turn it against the media, would Trump supporters go, yeah? What if the only state-approved media, and we're getting way past First Amendment here, but if the White House decreed that the only media allowed in the White House press pool were InfoWars and Gateway Pundit, and everybody else was banned, Would Trump supporters go, yeah? Or would they say, whoa, wait a minute. Isn't this going a bit too far? I think we know the answer to that question, don't we? Censorship or allowing for our government to shut down news they don't like is not conducive to a free or strong republic. Trump is actively working to silence all networks outside of those that have shown a willingness to act as state-run media in the same vein as North Korea or Cuba. But he's actively working to silence them by trying to shout them down. I don't think that's going to be particularly effective. But it shows his authoritarian instincts, you see. No, he's not sent out shadowy forces to lock up Jake Tapper yet. But it wouldn't surprise me to find out he's at least broached the subject with some of his inner circle. What he's done is use social media and an adoring mob to elevate himself as above the mere rabble of politics and politicians, even though he is the ultimate politician. He is the savior of our nation. He is the God King MAGA. And, needs to be pointed out, this is part of how Barack Obama fundamentally transformed the Republican Party. Obama set the stage for such a coup. He stirred up racial unrest, actively pressed against unity by creating enemies of law enforcement, Republicans, Christians, and large swaths of the population that weren't on board with his social justice reforms. At some point, people were going to tire of Obama's created class warfare and would push back. It just so happened, at the peak of the public angst, the hay-haired mountebank appeared, promoting himself as a man of people. Sorry. And an angry populace foolishly responded. In December, Bernstein warned against Trump's disdain for the truth. Trump lives and thrives in a fact-free environment, Bernstein said on CNN. No president, including Richard Nixon, has been so ignorant of fact and disdains fact in the way this president-elect does. And he's right. Also, before anyone feels necessary to go on some tangent about Bernstein being a liberal and part of the fake news media, save it. I don't care. He still has a point to make that we'd all better be willing to consider. Yesterday, Trump tweeted out that the media were the enemies of the people. There he is, saving the people from the frightening specter of ideas and information again. Propaganda. It's not that Trump has a problem with propaganda. He just has a problem with propaganda that isn't his, you see. Bernstein pointed out something really important that seems to have been lost in the haze of the last 3 or 4 months, however. When focus of press was on Hillary's server by same fake news organizations, enemies of the people cited by Donald Trump, he saw patriots. See, that's the common thread. If it hurts him, he's against it. Donald Trump, that is. If it helps him, he's all for it. That's the one lodestone. That's the one common thread throughout everything related to Donald Trump. If it hurts him, he's against it and lashes out. And if it helps him, he thinks it's wonderful. That's right. When he can use them, the media, to benefit himself, they're not such enemies and they're completely not fake. Only when the focus is on his wrongdoing are they enemies. See, Trump received, let's not forget, Trump received $2 billion worth of free media time during the Republican primaries. And he owes his position to every network he has now branded the enemy, as well as those who are content to be a part of the state-run media, a.k.a. Fox News, and Gateway Pundit, and InfoWars. If you want to know who the real enemies are, look to those networks that are afraid to report on every detail surrounding this presidency. Because if anything happened, or if anything that truly threatens the well-being of our nation does happen, They're the ones who will be sitting on the truth in order to protect the image of dear leader. And remember, the freedoms we enjoy here came at the expense of a lot of American bloodshed. To quote Ronald Reagan, Ronaldus Magnus, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States when men were, past tense, free." And if we think we could never lose it, you'd better take a hard look at who you're not allowed to question and then ask yourself why. Am I being over dramatic? Maybe, but I really don't think so. The press, for all their bias, is not our enemy. The ones who fear the press are.